The day started like any other in the luxury restaurant, with the sun just beginning to spill warm light across the polished floors and gleaming tables. The staff moved quickly, preparing for the lunch rush. The aroma of fresh bread and rich coffee filled the air. Every waiter and waitress knew this was a place where elegance met precision, where even the smallest mistake could be noticed by a guest. But none of them could have predicted the arrival of the guest who would change the rhythm of the day. Early in the morning, word spread among the staff that an important visitor would be arriving. It was unusual because the restaurant often hosted wealthy people, but today there was a certain tension in the air, as if everyone instinctively knew this guest was not like the others. Whispers filled the staff room. People tried to guess who it might be, some hoping it would be someone famous, while others feared it might be someone hard to impress. The manager paced back and forth, making sure everything was perfect. Silverware was polished until it gleamed. The tables were arranged with meticulous care, and every chair was aligned exactly right. Nothing could be left to chance. As the clock approached noon, the sound of a sleek car arriving outside caused a small ripple of excitement among the staff. Through the large windows, they could see a dark luxury vehicle pulling up, and a well-dressed chauffeur opening the door. Out stepped a man whose presence was impossible to ignore. He moved with confidence, his gaze steady, scanning the restaurant in a way that made it clear he was evaluating everything. The staff watched silently as he entered, his steps deliberate, almost as if he were on a mission. The atmosphere in the restaurant changed instantly. Regular conversations died down. The diners, sensing the arrival of someone important, turned their heads subtly, trying not to stare but unable to hide their curiosity. The staff straightened, their movements sharper, their smiles practiced yet tense. Every detail mattered now. The billionaire's eyes were sharp, watching everything as if nothing escaped his notice. Among the staff was a young waitress who had worked at the restaurant for a couple of years. She had seen countless VIPs come and go, but something about this man made her feel a mixture of fear and curiosity. She kept her hands busy with plates, but her mind raced. What kind of questions would he ask? How should she act? She noticed the subtle ways her colleagues were trying to impress him, adjusting their posture, rehearsing polite greetings, and even whispering to each other about what to say. Yet she stayed quiet, observing, learning, and quietly preparing herself. The billionaire moved slowly through the dining area, nodding slightly at a few guests but not stopping. He seemed to be searching, not just for food or service, but for something deeper, a sign of intelligence, confidence, or perhaps courage. He finally stopped near the center of the room, looking directly at the staff as if to say, "Show me what you've got." The energy in the restaurant became almost tangible, thick with anticipation. Each staff member wondered if they would be the one to catch his attention, and fear mixed with excitement made it hard to breathe. The manager, sensing the tension, approached the billionaire politely, introducing himself and explaining the restaurant's traditions. The billionaire listened quietly, nodding occasionally, but his attention was mostly on the staff, his eyes moving from one person to another. It was clear he was testing them even before any words were spoken. He finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority, asking questions in Arabic. The words were deliberate, challenging, and not easy for everyone to understand. Most of the staff froze, unsure of how to respond, their training momentarily forgotten in the face of this unexpected challenge. The young waitress felt a flutter of panic but also a spark of determination. She understood his words immediately, and instinctively, she began to formulate her answer. She could feel the eyes of her colleagues on her, some in hope, some in silent judgment. She took a steadying breath, reminding herself that she had the knowledge and the courage to answer. The room felt like it had slowed down, every heartbeat loud, every movement noticeable. The tension was electric, and the billionaire's gaze seemed to pierce right through her, testing her composure. Outside, the restaurant continued with its usual rhythm, but inside, it felt like time had stopped. Every staff member was silently questioning their abilities, wondering if they were worthy of recognition or if they would embarrass themselves. Some whispered to each other under their breath, while others tried to appear calm, their hands clenched tightly to keep from shaking. The smell of freshly baked bread and coffee now mixed with the nervous energy in the room, creating a strange, almost surreal atmosphere. The billionaire finally moved his attention fully to the young waitress. There was no anger or impatience in his expression, only curiosity. It was a subtle, quiet pressure that was more intense than any loud criticism. She felt her heart race, but she also felt a quiet confidence rising within her. She had prepared herself for moments like this, but never imagined it would be under such scrutiny. She straightened, adjusted her apron, and stepped forward, ready to face the challenge. As the minutes passed, the rest of the staff watched in a mixture of awe and fear. None of them had expected anyone to respond with such confidence. The atmosphere in the restaurant was now a mixture of suspense and admiration, as if everyone collectively held their breath, waiting for what would happen next. The young waitress's determination was clear, and in that moment, it was obvious that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Even the diners seemed to sense it, glancing over subtly, their curiosity piqued by the silent intensity radiating from the staff. They could see the young waitress, standing firm and ready, and they could feel the billionaire's focused gaze. It was a rare moment when time and space seemed to shrink around the two of them, creating a bubble where nothing else mattered. The rest of the restaurant existed in a quiet, almost reverent suspension, as if everyone was witnessing the beginning of something remarkable. The young waitress took a deep breath and focused, ready to answer the challenge. This was more than just a question. It was a test of courage, knowledge, and composure under pressure. She felt a sense of pride and determination unlike anything she had experienced before. The billionaire watched her carefully, noting every small movement, every sign of confidence or hesitation. The tension was thick, but within it, there was also a spark of opportunity. The chance for someone to stand out and prove themselves. The staff silently acknowledged that this was a pivotal moment. For years, they had served countless wealthy guests, but few had tested them like this. It was not just about service or politeness. It was about intelligence, bravery, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. Everyone understood that this moment could change the course of their day, perhaps even their career. The young waitress, once overlooked, was now at the center of everyone's attention. As she prepared to speak, the young waitress felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. She knew that answering correctly could earn her recognition, not just from the billionaire, but from her colleagues as well. She also understood that failure could be embarrassing, but that fear only strengthened her resolve. She realized that this was not just a test of knowledge. It was a test of character, and she was ready to rise to the occasion. The restaurant, normally filled with soft chatter and clinking dishes, now held a quiet intensity. Every person in the room sensed that something important was about to happen. The young waitress's heart beat steadily, and she focused entirely on the task at hand. The billionaire's eyes, sharp and observant, never left her face. It was a moment that would remain etched in memory for everyone present. The stage was set, the tension palpable, and the young waitress stood ready to meet the challenge with courage and grace. The young waitress took a deep breath and let her mind clear. The question from the billionaire had been precise, in perfect Arabic, and meant to test not only her knowledge but her composure. While most of the staff around her had frozen, she felt a strange calm settling inside. She realized that fear would only cloud her mind, so she focused on listening carefully to every word, analyzing the question step by step. The billionaire watched her closely, his dark eyes unblinking. He had asked the question in a way that seemed simple to some but carried subtle challenges. It required quick thinking and courage to answer confidently. The rest of the staff whispered among themselves, unsure if anyone could get it right. Some avoided eye contact, afraid of making a mistake under the billionaire's watchful gaze. Others secretly hoped the young waitress would fail, believing their own skills might then shine. But she had no such doubts. She knew that this was her moment to prove herself. She began to speak, her voice steady but soft, carefully choosing every word. The room held its breath. The billionaire's attention never wavered. He wanted to see if she could handle the pressure, if she could speak with clarity and intelligence. Each word she spoke seemed to resonate in the quiet space, echoing off the walls as if carrying her confidence to every corner of the restaurant. Her colleagues watched, some with admiration, some with disbelief, as she answered correctly and with thoughtful explanation. The other staff members were stunned. They had hesitated, whispered to each other, and even panicked, but she had stood firm. Her courage and understanding were evident. The billionaire's expression softened slightly, a hint of approval in his gaze. It was not just her answer that impressed him, but the poise with which she delivered it. The atmosphere, once tense with fear, now shifted slightly, charged with a mixture of awe and respect. The young waitress continued, explaining her reasoning carefully. Her words flowed naturally, with no hint of arrogance. She was not trying to impress anyone except with her knowledge and calmness. The billionaire nodded at appropriate moments, clearly following her explanation and testing her thought process. He asked follow-up questions, slightly more difficult this time, and she answered each one with accuracy and calm. Every response demonstrated not just intelligence, but confidence and clarity of thought. As she spoke, she noticed subtle reactions from the other staff. Some had widened eyes, mouths slightly open in astonishment. A few exchanged quiet whispers, acknowledging that they had underestimated her. The manager, standing nearby, was visibly impressed, realizing that this waitress, often overlooked in the daily routine, had something special. It was a reminder that talent and courage could be found in unexpected places. The billionaire then leaned slightly closer, speaking in a calm but firm voice. He posed a question that was tricky, designed to test both knowledge and courage under pressure. The young waitress paused for only a brief moment, gathering her thoughts, and answered confidently. Each word was deliberate, clear, and thoughtful. She could feel the weight of the moment, knowing that one wrong word might diminish her credibility, yet she remained composed. Her mind was focused, and her training, experience, and intelligence all came together perfectly. The staff watched in silence. The room had transformed from ordinary dining space into a stage where courage and intellect were on display. No one dared interrupt, and even the diners seemed to sense that something extraordinary was happening. The young waitress's calm demeanor, her precise answers, and the subtle confidence in her voice created a powerful impression. The billionaire was no longer just testing. He was observing, evaluating, and clearly impressed. Every response she gave was correct, thoughtful, and carefully delivered. The tension in the room gradually shifted from anxiety to amazement. People started to recognize that this moment was not just about answering a question correctly. It was about composure, intelligence, and the courage to step forward when others were frozen. It was a rare combination, and the young waitress embodied it completely. The billionaire asked another question, slightly more challenging, and she answered without hesitation. Each answer seemed to increase the respect in the room. The staff could feel it in the air. The young waitress, once quietly working among her colleagues, had become the center of attention. She was not boasting or trying to show off. She simply demonstrated knowledge and confidence. It was clear to everyone that her courage had set her apart. Some of the staff exchanged glances, realizing how they had underestimated her. They had doubted her ability to respond under pressure, but now they saw a different reality. She was calm, intelligent, and confident. Her composure seemed almost unshakable even under the piercing gaze of the billionaire. The manager, who had been tense moments ago, now wore a small smile, proud of the way she handled the situation. The billionaire leaned back slightly, a small smile forming on his face. He had seen many people try to impress him, but few could remain so calm and composed under scrutiny. The young waitress had not only answered correctly but had done so with grace and dignity. He asked one final, slightly complex question, and she answered with perfect clarity. It was the culmination of the test, and she passed with flying colors. The room seemed to breathe again. The tension that had filled every corner slowly melted, replaced by quiet admiration. Colleagues who had frozen, whispered, or doubted themselves now looked at the young waitress with newfound respect. She had proven that courage, clarity, and knowledge could shine even in high-pressure situations. The billionaire, who had watched silently, now nodded approvingly, clearly acknowledging her abilities. The young waitress realized the significance of what had just happened. It was more than just a series of questions and answers. It was a moment of recognition, a moment where her skills and confidence were seen and appreciated. The experience filled her with a quiet pride and a sense of accomplishment. She had faced a challenge that many feared and had succeeded not by chance, but by preparation, intelligence, and calm courage. The staff around her began to return to their duties, but the energy in the room had changed. There was a subtle respect, an unspoken acknowledgement that the young waitress had earned her place in that moment. The manager nodded at her silently, proud and aware that she had just demonstrated qualities that were rare and valuable. The diners, though unaware of the full context, could sense the calm authority and confidence she had displayed. The billionaire finally moved, signaling the end of his test. His expression was thoughtful, satisfied, and impressed. The young waitress felt a sense of relief, but also a quiet joy. She had faced a challenge that seemed impossible to others and had proven herself. Her confidence had been tested, her knowledge evaluated, and she had emerged stronger. It was a defining moment, one that would remain with her and everyone in the restaurant for a long time. As the billionaire prepared to leave, he gave a subtle nod in her direction, a small but powerful sign of acknowledgement. The young waitress stood straight, feeling a quiet sense of triumph. She had answered when others had frozen, showing intelligence, courage, and calmness. It was a reminder to herself and to everyone watching that true talent often appears in unexpected places. The experience was unforgettable, a moment where courage and knowledge were rewarded in a high-stakes environment. Everyone in the room could feel the impact of what had just happened, and the young waitress knew she had changed something. Not just her day, but her sense of confidence and self-worth. After successfully answering the billionaire's questions, the young waitress felt a mix of relief and excitement. She knew that what she had just done was remarkable, but she also sensed that this moment was far from over. The billionaire's attention had shifted, and now he seemed genuinely interested in her abilities, observing her closely as she moved through the restaurant, attending to her regular duties. Every gesture she made was careful but natural, as she tried to maintain her usual calm and polite demeanor despite the intensity of the situation. The staff around her were still recovering from the shock. Many of them whispered quietly to each other, discussing what had just happened. They were amazed that someone so quiet and often overlooked could rise to the occasion so flawlessly. Some expressed quiet admiration, while others showed signs of jealousy, realizing they had underestimated her. The manager, who had been tense earlier, now wore a smile that mixed pride with relief. He had always known she had potential, but today she had shown it in a way that could not be ignored. The billionaire continued to watch her closely, his expression thoughtful. He asked a few more casual questions, not in front of the whole staff, but quietly as he observed her work. Each time, she answered with clarity and confidence. Her calmness and poise were remarkable, especially in such a high-pressure situation. He seemed to respect her not only for her intelligence but also for the way she carried herself, never appearing arrogant or overly eager. She was natural, genuine, and attentive, and that seemed to impress him more than anything else. As the minutes passed, the atmosphere in the restaurant slowly began to shift. While the staff remained slightly tense, there was now a sense of awe and respect. The young waitress had proven herself in a way that words could not fully capture. She moved among the tables, serving dishes with precision, smiling at the diners politely, and maintaining the flow of the restaurant. Yet every step she took carried the quiet confidence that had grown stronger since the billionaire first addressed her. The billionaire asked her to explain certain menu items, probing not only for knowledge but also for her ability to communicate clearly and professionally. She responded with ease, demonstrating both her understanding of the cuisine and her capacity to remain composed under scrutiny. He listened carefully, occasionally nodding, clearly impressed by the level of detail in her explanations. It was no longer a simple test. It had become an interaction where he genuinely wanted to know her thoughts and opinions. Her colleagues watched, learning something unexpected. They saw that it was not enough to simply follow instructions or perform basic duties. What had impressed the billionaire was her combination of intelligence, courage, and authenticity. Some of them began to reflect on their own approach, realizing that confidence and honesty could make a much greater impact than rehearsed gestures or superficial attempts to impress. The young waitress's quiet strength had become a lesson in itself. The billionaire then asked her to handle a particularly complex situation. A small issue at one of the tables that required both tact and problem-solving skills. She approached it calmly, listening carefully to the guest's concern and resolving the matter efficiently. Her response was thoughtful and empathetic, and the guest left satisfied, unaware that they had become part of an informal test. The billionaire observed everything closely, clearly impressed by her ability to remain composed while managing multiple responsibilities. As the service continued, the young waitress found herself growing more comfortable under his gaze. What had started as a tense challenge had evolved into a dynamic interaction. She realized that the billionaire was testing more than knowledge. He was testing character, patience, and the ability to maintain composure in all situations. Her success had given her confidence, and that confidence only made her more effective in her work. Each action, each word, each gesture became an extension of the poise she had shown during the initial challenge. The staff, seeing her succeed repeatedly, began to respond differently. Some offered quiet encouragement. Others stepped aside to let her handle tasks she could manage best. There was a subtle shift in the team dynamics, as if they collectively recognized that true talent could come from the most unexpected sources. The young waitress's performance was changing the atmosphere of the entire restaurant, inspiring others without her needing to speak about it. The billionaire then engaged her in a more personal conversation, asking about her experience in the restaurant, her interests, and her perspective on the work she did. She answered honestly, sharing insights about what she had learned over the years and how she approached challenges. Her answers were thoughtful and measured, revealing not just knowledge but wisdom gained through experience. The billionaire listened attentively, clearly valuing her perspective and the way she communicated it. As the interaction continued, diners began to notice the subtle shift in energy. The young waitress moved with a quiet confidence, balancing attentiveness with composure. The billionaire's presence added intensity, but she had learned to remain calm under pressure. Observing her, diners and staff alike could sense that something exceptional was happening. Her ability to remain poised and effective, even in the spotlight, made her actions feel natural yet extraordinary. The manager, observing closely, decided to step back and allow the interaction to unfold organically. He recognized that this moment was more than a simple display of skills. It was an authentic demonstration of character. The young waitress was not performing for recognition alone. She was simply being herself, and that authenticity was what made her remarkable. Her confidence had grown, her composure was unshakable, and the billionaire was clearly impressed. The billionaire asked a few more questions, each slightly more challenging than the last, and she answered them all with precision and clarity. Her responses were confident yet humble, demonstrating both intelligence and empathy. The staff watched in silence, many inspired by her performance. They realized that courage, knowledge, and authenticity could create a powerful impression, even in the presence of someone extremely wealthy and influential. The young waitress also noticed subtle gestures of approval from the billionaire. A nod, a slight smile, a quiet acknowledgement of her composure and intelligence. Each gesture reinforced her confidence, allowing her to continue performing her duties with grace and poise. The restaurant, once tense with anticipation, now had a sense of harmony and respect. She had transformed the energy of the space simply by being calm, confident, and genuine. As the service continued, she managed to maintain a perfect balance between attention to detail and interaction with the billionaire. Each task was completed efficiently, each response was thoughtful, and each movement was purposeful. Her colleagues, once unsure of themselves, began to see her as a leader in action, not by title but by example. The young waitress's quiet strength had become the guiding force in the room. The billionaire, clearly impressed by her abilities, asked a final question designed to test both her problem-solving skills and her composure under pressure. She considered it carefully, answering with both clarity and insight. Her response was measured, intelligent, and delivered without hesitation. The room seemed to hold its breath as he listened, and when she finished, a faint smile appeared on his face. A rare sign of approval from someone who had seen many try and fail. The young waitress realized that the experience had not only proven her abilities to the billionaire but also to herself. She had demonstrated courage, intelligence, and authenticity under intense scrutiny, and she felt a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. Her colleagues, inspired by her performance, began to reflect on their own approach to work and life, understanding that confidence and character could make a far greater impact than fear or hesitation. The billionaire finally rose from his seat, signaling that the informal test and observation had come to an end. His gaze lingered on the young waitress for a moment longer, a subtle acknowledgement of her abilities and the courage she had shown. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had handled a situation that would have overwhelmed many others. Her confidence had grown, her skills had been recognized, and her place in the restaurant was forever changed. The staff, now fully aware of what had occurred, returned to their routines with a renewed sense of respect and inspiration. The young waitress moved among them with grace and composure, carrying herself with a quiet pride. She had faced one of the most challenging moments of her career and had emerged not just unscathed, but stronger, more confident, and deeply respected. The experience had transformed her, and the restaurant itself had felt the shift in energy, as the impact of her courage and intelligence rippled through every corner of the room. The young waitress stood quietly, attending to her duties, but she could feel the billionaire's gaze on her. It was not intimidating anymore. It was full of respect and genuine interest. She had proven herself once with knowledge, then with composure, and now he seemed to recognize her as someone extraordinary. Her colleagues, who had been watching closely, could see the subtle changes in his expression, the way he acknowledged her without words. It was clear that he was impressed not only by her intelligence but also by her calm demeanor, her humility, and the quiet confidence she carried. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted again. It was no longer just tense anticipation. It had become a space of admiration. Guests who had been quietly dining began to notice the subtle interaction, sensing something remarkable unfolding. The staff, inspired by the young waitress's courage and poise, started to mirror a newfound confidence in their own actions. Even those who had been jealous or skeptical could not ignore the way she had handled the billionaire's attention with grace and skill. The billionaire finally spoke directly to her in a slightly softer tone, asking more in-depth questions about the menu, the restaurant's operations, and her experiences. She answered each question thoughtfully, drawing on years of observation, practice, and insight. Her words were clear, articulate, and free of hesitation. It was not simply about giving the correct answer. It was about conveying understanding and demonstrating genuine competence. The billionaire nodded, clearly satisfied with every response, his eyes showing approval and recognition. As the conversation continued, the young waitress noticed how her colleagues reacted. Some looked surprised, others impressed, and a few inspired to improve their own performance. The manager, who had been cautious and observant, now smiled proudly, realizing that her presence and skill had elevated the energy of the entire restaurant. He knew that this was more than a single impressive moment. It was a turning point for both the young waitress and the team around her. The billionaire asked her to demonstrate something practical, a small task that required efficiency, patience, and attention to detail. She carried out the task flawlessly, handling each step with precision while maintaining composure. It was clear that she was not just knowledgeable but also skilled in practical application. The billionaire observed intently, taking note of how naturally she handled both pressure and responsibility. Her colleagues watched in silent awe, realizing that true capability extended beyond knowledge alone. It required composure, problem-solving, and emotional intelligence. The young waitress then engaged in a brief conversation with the billionaire about her personal journey. She shared her experiences working in the restaurant, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned along the way. Her words were sincere and heartfelt, reflecting both humility and self-awareness. The billionaire listened attentively, nodding occasionally, clearly valuing not only her responses but also her perspective on life and work. Her ability to communicate honestly and confidently created a deep impression that went beyond surface-level skills. As the interaction continued, other staff members began to adjust their own behavior. They realized that the young waitress's approach had set a standard, one based on confidence, clarity, and authenticity. Some quietly mirrored her professionalism, while others reflected inwardly on how they could improve. The restaurant itself seemed to respond to her calm yet assertive energy, with service running more smoothly and guests receiving an even higher level of attention. The billionaire then called for a short break, and in that time he quietly spoke with the manager. Although their conversation was private, it was clear that the young waitress had earned his recognition. The manager, proud and slightly emotional, realized that she had done more than answer questions correctly. She had demonstrated leadership, intelligence, and poise under pressure. The recognition was not only for her ability to respond but for the way she had conducted herself throughout the experience. When the break ended, the billionaire returned and requested a private demonstration of her problem-solving skills with a small but delicate task. She approached it calmly, methodically assessing the situation and taking deliberate steps to ensure success. Her colleagues watched in silence, appreciating the skill and confidence she displayed. Each action she took reflected not only competence but also integrity, a combination that impressed everyone present. The billionaire smiled, a subtle but clear sign of approval, and thanked her for her honesty, skill, and poise. His recognition was quiet but profound, acknowledging her abilities in a way that did not need words to be understood. The staff, inspired and motivated, began to appreciate the impact of her example. It was a reminder that courage, intelligence, and authenticity could create respect and admiration, even in the most high-pressure environments. As service continued, the young waitress moved confidently between tables, attending to guests with a natural elegance. Her presence was noticeable not because of showiness but because of the quiet confidence she exuded. The billionaire continued to observe, occasionally asking her thoughtful questions or seeking her advice on minor details. She responded gracefully, maintaining the perfect balance between attentiveness, composure, and assertiveness. The manager, now fully relaxed, observed the entire interaction with pride. He knew that her performance had elevated the atmosphere of the restaurant, inspiring the team and impressing the billionaire. He realized that recognition and respect were earned through genuine skill, courage, and humility, not through superficial gestures. The young waitress had embodied these qualities perfectly. The staff, once tense and unsure, began to perform with renewed energy and attention to detail. They had witnessed a remarkable example of poise and skill under pressure. The young waitress's example reminded them that true professionalism and respect were earned through consistent effort, composure, and integrity. Her quiet courage and confidence became a silent guide for everyone in the room. The billionaire, satisfied with the observation and interaction, prepared to leave. Before departing, he gave a subtle nod toward the young waitress, a small but powerful acknowledgement of her abilities and character. She stood with a quiet sense of pride, understanding the significance of that gesture. It was recognition from someone of great influence and experience, a validation of her courage, intelligence, and composure. As the billionaire exited the restaurant, the young waitress felt a mixture of relief, pride, and gratitude. She had faced one of the most challenging experiences of her career and had handled it with grace and confidence. Her colleagues, inspired by her performance, approached her with quiet congratulations and acknowledgement. It was a moment of shared respect, one that would linger in the memory of everyone present. The manager gathered the staff briefly, acknowledging the extraordinary performance of the young waitress and the example she had set for everyone. He emphasized the importance of composure, confidence, and authenticity, reminding them that true recognition comes from skill and character, not simply from position or appearance. The lesson was clear. Courage, intelligence, and genuine professionalism could leave a lasting impression in ways that surpassed ordinary expectations. As the day continued, the young waitress resumed her duties with renewed confidence. She had faced an extraordinary challenge and had succeeded, earning recognition from the billionaire and admiration from her colleagues. The experience left her with a deep sense of pride, not just for the acknowledgement she had received but for the realization of her own capabilities. It was a turning point, one that would influence her career and personal growth for years to come. The staff continued their work, inspired by the young waitress's example. The restaurant itself seemed to function more smoothly, with a heightened sense of purpose and confidence. The guests received attentive service, and the atmosphere was filled with a subtle energy of respect and admiration. The young waitress's courage and composure had transformed not only her own experience, but also the dynamic of the entire restaurant. The story of the young waitress and the billionaire's recognition quickly spread among the staff, becoming a memorable example of courage, intelligence, and authenticity. It was a lesson in the power of confidence, humility, and genuine skill. The young waitress had not only proven herself but had also inspired others to approach their work with the same level of integrity and composure. As the day ended, the young waitress reflected on the experience. She realized that the challenge had been more than a test of knowledge. It had been an opportunity to demonstrate character, courage, and professionalism. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment and a quiet pride in her ability to remain calm and confident under pressure. The recognition she received from the billionaire was significant, but the most meaningful outcome was the personal growth and confidence she had gained through the experience. Her colleagues, inspired by her example, began to approach their work with renewed determination. They recognized the value of composure, intelligence, and authenticity, and the young waitress had shown them that these qualities could create lasting respect and admiration. The restaurant had been transformed by her example, and the impact of her courage and skill would continue to influence everyone who witnessed it. The young waitress had become a symbol of quiet strength, demonstrating that true talent and character could shine even in the most unexpected places. After the billionaire left the restaurant, a quiet energy lingered in the air. The young waitress returned to her duties, but she felt different. Her heart still carried the excitement of the recognition she had received, and she moved through the restaurant with a confidence that had not been there before. The other staff watched her, noticing the subtle shift in her presence. She no longer seemed like just another member of the team. She had become a source of inspiration. The manager called a brief meeting with the staff after the lunch rush. Everyone gathered quietly, curious about what he had to say. He began by acknowledging the extraordinary performance of the young waitress. He explained how she had not only answered the billionaire's questions correctly, but had done so with calmness, clarity, and poise. He reminded everyone that her example was a reminder of the importance of courage, intelligence, and authenticity. The staff listened attentively, some nodding in admiration, others quietly reflecting on how they could improve their own performance. The young waitress felt a mix of pride and humility. She understood that her actions had made an impact, not only on the billionaire but also on her colleagues. She had faced a challenge that many would have found intimidating, and she had succeeded by relying on knowledge, preparation, and inner calm. It was a personal victory, but it was also a lesson for everyone around her. The recognition she had earned was meaningful, but even more important was the confidence she now felt in her own abilities. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the restaurant changed. The staff became more attentive, more confident, and more willing to take initiative. They had witnessed firsthand what courage and composure could achieve, and it inspired them to strive for the same qualities. The young waitress continued her work as usual, but she carried herself with a quiet authority. Her colleagues looked to her as an example, and she realized that her actions had a subtle yet powerful influence on the team. The story of the young waitress and the billionaire's recognition spread beyond the restaurant. Regular guests who had witnessed the interaction shared the story with friends, praising the waitress's composure and skill. The reputation of the restaurant grew, not just for its food and service, but for the professionalism and integrity of its staff. The young waitress became known as someone who could handle pressure with grace, and her example inspired both new and seasoned employees. The billionaire himself returned occasionally, each time observing quietly and sometimes asking questions. The young waitress continued to impress him, not through grand gestures, but through her consistent competence, calmness, and honesty. Each interaction reinforced her confidence and further solidified the respect she had earned. She understood that recognition from someone influential was valuable, but what mattered most was the validation she felt in her own abilities. Her colleagues began to approach her for advice, asking how she managed to stay calm under pressure and how she had prepared herself for the challenge. She shared her experiences openly, explaining that preparation, focus, and belief in oneself were key. She emphasized the importance of observing, listening, and thinking carefully before responding. Her guidance was practical and relatable, and her colleagues appreciated her willingness to help them grow. The restaurant continued to thrive, and the young waitress's example became a cornerstone of its culture. Staff meetings often referenced the qualities she had demonstrated: courage, composure, intelligence, and authenticity. New employees were inspired by her story, and experienced staff were reminded that true professionalism was more than following procedures. It was about character and the way one carried oneself under pressure. The young waitress herself noticed subtle changes in her life. She felt more confident not only at work but also in personal interactions. The experience had taught her that courage and authenticity could open doors in unexpected ways. She began to approach challenges with a calm, measured mindset, knowing that preparation and confidence could help her navigate even the most difficult situations. The respect she had earned became a foundation for her personal growth and sense of self-worth. The manager continued to support her growth, assigning her more responsibilities and trusting her with important tasks. She handled each new challenge with the same calmness and skill that had impressed the billionaire. The staff, inspired by her example, collaborated more effectively and approached problems with renewed confidence. The restaurant became a place where competence and courage were celebrated, and the young waitress's actions had played a key role in shaping that culture. Over time, the young waitress's story became a source of motivation for everyone who worked at the restaurant. It was a reminder that talent and courage could be found in unexpected places, and that true recognition comes from authenticity, intelligence, and composure. She had proven that even in high-pressure situations, it was possible to succeed by staying calm, thinking clearly, and remaining true to oneself. The experience left a lasting impression on the young waitress. She felt proud of how she had handled the challenge, but she also felt grateful for the lessons she had learned and the respect she had earned. She understood that her actions had not only affected her own path but had also inspired others to strive for excellence. The confidence and composure she had developed would continue to guide her in future challenges, both in the restaurant and in life. As time passed, the young waitress continued to perform her duties with dedication and poise. She remained humble, but her quiet confidence was evident to everyone around her. The respect she had earned from the billionaire, the manager, and her colleagues became a source of motivation. She knew that true success was not measured solely by recognition but by the growth, courage, and integrity one demonstrated in every action. The restaurant itself flourished, benefiting from the heightened professionalism and motivation inspired by the young waitress. Guests continued to receive exceptional service, and the staff worked together with renewed purpose. The story of the young waitress became a part of the restaurant's culture, a living example of how courage, composure, and intelligence could create lasting impact. Her actions had transformed not only her own career, but also the environment around her, leaving a legacy of inspiration and respect. The young waitress often reflected on the experience, remembering the tension, the challenge, and the moment she had stood confidently in front of the billionaire. She realized that the experience had taught her more than any training or instruction ever could. It had shown her the power of inner confidence, the value of preparation, and the importance of authenticity. She had faced a high-pressure situation and had emerged stronger, more self-assured, and deeply respected. Her story became one that inspired others, reminding them that even in moments of uncertainty, courage and composure could make a difference. She had shown that intelligence and confidence, when combined with humility and authenticity, could leave a lasting impression. The experience had been a defining moment, one that shaped her approach to work, her relationships with colleagues, and her own understanding of personal growth. The young waitress continued to thrive, carrying the lessons she had learned into every aspect of her life. She approached challenges with confidence, handled pressure with calmness, and maintained her authenticity in every situation. Her colleagues, inspired by her example, followed her lead, creating a workplace culture defined by respect, integrity, and professionalism. The recognition she had received from the billionaire was meaningful, but the personal growth and confidence she had gained were the most significant rewards. In the end, the experience became a story not only of recognition but also of personal transformation. The young waitress had demonstrated that true talent and courage could shine even in high-pressure situations. She had inspired her colleagues, gained the respect of her manager and guests, and earned acknowledgement from someone influential. Her journey was a reminder that confidence, preparation, and authenticity could open doors, create respect, and leave a lasting impact on the world around her.